So let's get started. And the first question is a big one. And it is, what does success look like in esports aside from winning? Dan, I'm going to throw this one to you to start us off.
Of course. Look, I mean, it's kind of a loaded question because, even though esports in its modern form has really been around for close to 20 years, there's still so much upside potential of the industry at all different levels, whether it's the amateur, where we're seeing the collegiate scene start to expand and become more organized. Even a lot of the leagues and the major publishers are becoming much more organized. The schedules are becoming more predictable. It's getting a much more kind of a formal approach, the industry as a whole. So I'm actually going to kind of skate through the question and saying, there's so much upside, there's so much potential within the industry that there's literally just kind of success and potential on so many different levels that it's hard to really kind of pinpoint one or two specific things that lead to success. For me personally, I think that a lot of the success for the industry as a whole is just being embraced by brands for sponsorship, whether it's on initially it was much more of an international level, but we're seeing it broken down by region. It's even getting down to the more local level. So just the embrace of sponsorship. And then again, for me, I think media rights, where we start to see some kind of competition between distribution partners to broadcast and distribute a lot of the events. That's kind of the next natural progression of the industry.
I mean, Johnny, you're in analytics. So do you have a kind of very specific idea of what success looks like?
So I'm actually, I think Dan's point is the base of everything, right? The actual embrace and support of esports as entertainment, and how people might tune in to esports events rather than watch their favorite show on Netflix. So I think that is already pretty interesting. But just another really interesting aspect of what success might look like is that blooming of kind of auxiliary and or indirect professional roles that now have had to be created to support the growth of esports. That those new business intelligence people, analysts, people are actually working closely with the partners, developing very detailed strategies to just evaluate and analyze like we do, measure the success numerically. And that's something that I think it was also a stepping stone to bring in some of those more indirect partners or sponsors into the space, because they can see their investments can be actually justified, and they can see a detailed return on investment broken out for them. So just if you have to choose between maybe a more analogic kind of medium, and compare it to esports, where they can give you data the day after the event or even the same day and get a broken out information, I think that also is a sign of success, because it's a healthy industry. It's an industry that is not only growing, but it's people say the industry is maturing. I think it's mature enough. It's really professional by now. And yes, there's always room to grow, but I think we're in a very nice phase of success right now.
I like that. An optimistic answer.
Of course, always.
So, Brian, what does success look like for you? What are your metrics?
Well, I think the best metric is fans and gamers coming back together for live experiences again. I think we're all really excited to see that happen, and I think that there's a lot of signs that are pointing to that in the relatively near-term future, candidly, especially in North America, but across the world, really. And so I think when we measure success, in our profession, in our part of the world that we're involved with, it's creating great places, great venues that allow these amazing and memorable live events to take place. And I think that, what we see certainly is an evolution of these venues and these venue types that are emerging. everything from large scale arena type venues, one of which we're designing right now abroad that will be public here in the next month. That's very exciting. So large scale venues, and on the other end of the spectrum, communities that are coming together for more localized experiences, gaming center type of experiences where people can come together. They can have access to high speed, computer systems to game. They can stream. You can have smaller localized events, production studio environments, and training environments that are allowing us to build up the next generation of gamers and allow people to have more access into esports, and can provide a professional pathway for amateur players all the way to the pros. So I think there's a lot of ways that, from an architectural standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, the way that venues and venue infrastructure is going to play an important role in propelling the success, of an industry, but creating access, and allowing people to engage, to be together virtually, certainly, but physically. And I think that as we move forward, in 2021 and beyond, we're going to see a lot of exciting development. But from our perspective, that's certainly how we measure success.
I love that. Really interesting. That's actually something we're going to touch on in kind of the next question, a little look at some of the actual kind of physical infrastructure of it. But Andy, I wanted to get your thoughts. Obviously, you've drawn the short straw and you're last here and there's a lot being said. But for you, what does success look like?
Yeah, just to draw on some of what Johnny and Dan were saying too. I mean, I'm obviously taking this question from the perspective of a sponsor, a fairly long time sponsor within esports. And I think for companies like AMD, we kind of need to move to the next phase of partnerships. There are a lot of great benefits to esports sponsorships, a lot of great content and social campaigns that generate awareness for our brands. And I think esports sponsorships are an amazing tool for generating brand awareness and consideration for sponsors. I think where we need to get, though, is essentially we need to get to a point where we can move beyond awareness, actually. And, especially when you've been doing these sponsorships for like 6 years, like we have, the first couple of years, you're basically just trying to build a brand name for yourself and for your products. But as you get deeper into these sponsorships, one thing I've personally been challenged with at AMD is to try and figure out, how do we move beyond proving awareness? We have pretty good market recognition, but it doesn't always tell us, how do people feel about the products? And it's a little bit, we're in a little bit more difficult situation because we're an ingredient brand to the PCs and the consoles that people play on. So sometimes it's kind of that all-important aspect of gaming that people haven't really considered because they don't always put their hands on it. So it presents specific challenges for us to really do more to prove that we're moving the needle, and that we're, through the activations that we do through our sponsorships, that we're really getting that message across and building not just brand awareness, but brand confidence. Are people actually, do they like our products? Do these sponsorships move the needle in terms of increasing this, consideration for purchasing our products, or hopefully ultimately buying them?
Andy, I wanted to come straight back to you, actually, because I thought it was interesting earlier that Dan was saying that one of the signs of success, in esports is these big sponsorships, and you're on that kind of side of it. And whilst, you are an endemic brand, you are more familiar with the gaming space than perhaps some other sponsors would be. What for you, what convinces you of esports success as somebody who's looking to decide whether or not you would sponsor, that you would put money in?
I mean, it really goes back to the point I just made, when I obviously get a lot of pitches from esports organizations, both events and teams, influencers, the whole gamut. And it's really, looking at the proposals and trying to figure out what new and creative things are these teams doing. I mean, like I mentioned, content and social are kind of table stakes, I think, these days for brands that are looking to do esports sponsorships. But a lot of times there's tonality that needs to be considered. You need to be getting your message across authentically. And, a lot of like unboxing videos have been done to death, for example. Like, how do you kind of grow the creativity, maybe in a way that's more irreverent or funnier, but also, you're trying to get a serious point across about a product. But, it's not just this system has these specs and it runs at this many FPS, and just trying to get that brand message across, but in a way that's really more consumable for who we're trying to target, who are the gamers themselves. I think you can kind of get caught in a rut where, you know, you can make content that maybe isn't as engaging as it could be. So that's something that I really look to when, you know, talking to various organizations is, you know, what kind of offerings do you have? Give me examples of like content that you've made. And also, are you thinking beyond content and social campaigns? Is there anything groundbreaking that hasn't been tried? You know, for me, a lot of marketing is really just kind of a trial and error process. You know, you have to do a lot of things, figure out what works, amplify those. And if you do things, you know, if you make mistakes, which you will do along the way, that's fine. Just learn from those mistakes and kind of double down on what works.
Fantastic. Really great advice there. Hope everybody's taking notes because I feel like there's some really key elements in there.